What's up again, everybody? Today we're going to take a nice little stroll through the absolute beauty that is the lore book, the Flesh and Blood Welcome to Wraith lore book. We're going to do that because, if you haven't heard the news, the Kingdom set that we were expecting to see drop at the end of September is actually called Tales of Aria. It turns out that the Kingdom's moniker was just a code name, and we will be venturing into the mythical sanctuary of Aria, one of my favorite regions actually in Wraith. In fact, why don't we do this? The first thing we're going to do before we do anything is let's go to the front of the lore book and let's take a look at the map so that you can see the world map. Here's the world of Wraith, all of its various locations, all of its places. We have Solana and the Demonastery. They've kind of been having a beef with each other for a while, and as we saw in Monarch, they're kind of having it out right now. We have the Savage Lands way over here. We have the Pits and Metrics right next to each other. We have Volcor down here, which has just descended into constant war and chaos. Mysteria, which is very mysterious and covered by mists. And then we have Aria. Aria is protected, as we can kind of see. I don't know if this is an artistic representation or if these are just mountain ranges, but protected by some ancient magic that kind of keeps a barrier here and hides it from the rest of the world. It's a land full of lush green, like valleys and forests and hills, but it's also got a large mountain range, and perhaps this is the largest of all of them. Maybe that's where they're locating Eisen's Peak, but it has a huge, large mountain range with snow-covered mountains. The landscape is ever-changing. It's just really, really cool. It's a really cool place, very well described in this book, very well illustrated in this book as well. So I thought it would be fun to learn more about the land of Aria by looking in this book. Because if you haven't seen this book, it's beautiful. So let's look at it. By the way, first thing we should talk about, Fjendahl's spring tunic is actually from Aria. So the spring tunic here depicted, I guess this is the tunic. I'm not sure if she's actually Fjendahl. We'll have to talk more about that as we come to a later page. But the spring tunic here, the artwork of this entertainer, this dancer at the Everfest Carnival, which we'll also talk about later, is literally happening in Aria. So there's a lot of references to Aria already in the game, and for good reasons, because this place is awesome. So I'm going to start by just reading this to you. Sit back, relax, maybe pull up a chair, grab a drink and a snack or something like that, and let's take a nice little stroll through Aria, shall we? For thousands of years, the fantastical realm of Aria has remained untouched by the passage of time, far removed from the chaos and the struggles that affect the rest of the world. Iridescent flora and verdant trees cover the landscape in brilliant colors, as vibrant as the people of Aria themselves. From great mountain ranges glittering with ice and snow to vast forests and lush meadows, the rolling hills of Aria are teeming with life. A true sanctuary, Aria's abundant resources are nurtured by the mysterious energy known as the flow. The flow shapes and changes the landscape as it passes, transforming mountains into valleys, forests into plains. The energy of the flow has created some of the most incredible scenery in all of Wraith, giving life to plains of constant thunderstorms and forests of translucent fungi. The people of Aria are accustomed to life of comfort, living in a rich, plentiful landscape. Natural defenses and ancient magics protect its people, hiding Aria from the outside world. Generations of a peaceful, carefree lifestyle have cultivated a society rich with bards, musicians, performers, and entertainers, with taverns serving some of the most fantastical liquors and spirits known to man. Yet, in recent years, Aria has experienced a transformation. The barriers that once concealed and protected Aria have begun to fracture, revealing its existence for the first time in centuries. Outlanders threaten to breach the borders and enter Aria, while the flow has become unstable, transforming the land at an increasing rate. This once peaceful region has entered a new era of uncertainty, and its people rise up to defend their homeland from the outside world. As we turn the page, we come to a section of the book about Aria that talks about things that you'll find here. Most importantly is this section on the flow. The flow is perhaps the most interesting to me about the land of Aria. It's one of the reasons why I like this land, perhaps the most out of all of the regions of Wraith. I find this so interesting. The flow is a wild and unpredictable force of nature. It shapes the landscape around it as it ebbs and flows. It shapes all of Aria, folding mountains into valleys, sculpting rivers out of stone, and shifting whole forests from place to place. In areas where it is particularly strong, the flow manifests as streaks of light across the sky, a shining array of vibrant color high above the earth. Everything in Aria, from soil to stone to living creature, is born of the flow, and when their time in this world is over, they will return to the flow once more. And to me, this is the most interesting part, because if every living creature is born of the flow, then perhaps the flow itself is the talent that we see, or perhaps one of the talents that we see in this set. It could also be just one of those things that the flow is inspiring, like an elemental type talent, or two elemental type talents. That was one of the comments that was most often echoed on my previous video when we talked about the kind of reveal of the title of this set. And perhaps that's the case. Perhaps we have sort of a nature talent that's from one region of this area, in Aria, and one that's more representative of a different area in Aria. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. This part's interesting over here with Sisari. In fact, these are creatures that are magical in origin. They are almost, they're described here as mirages. They're almost kind of like illusions that we see in Illusionist. And these Sisari actually might have also appeared on cards already. If you look at the young Bravo hero portrait, in the background there are some very bright, kind of iridescent butterflies. Those could just be really cool looking butterflies, but they also could be Sisari, which is really interesting to me. I think we may have already seen these creatures already on cards. This section on the folk tales of Aria has got some interesting things. One of the most interesting that jumps out to me is this Tempest Plain. It's a large plain that is plagued by perpetual thunderstorms. The ground is stained black, burned to a crisp by the sheets of lightning striking the earth. Anything within range of the Tempest Plain is immediately struck by a bolt of lightning, which is just funny, turning to dust in an instant. This is yet another thing that kind of points us to, electricity, lightning, the elemental, kind of forces of this area being one of the talents in this upcoming set. We've seen a lot of lightning imagery. I guess we've seen one piece of lightning imagery there, but we've also seen it in other cards as well. And I'm curious to see if this is going to be one of the talents. Also interesting, we have the Bleak Expanse, a frozen wasteland plagued by constant snowstorms, which is impossible to navigate. There's only one path through it. If you stray from the path, you get teleported back to where you started, which is kind of cool. The blinding snow and biting cold are devastatingly fatal for anyone who approaches it unprepared. We also have up here the Wishing Wells, which is actually depicted right here. You can only really find them by accident, and if you make a wish on them, the wish will come true, but oftentimes not in a way you think, which could be cool. All of this is describing things we may see on cards that may have some effect on a card in this set, which is really cool. Now, as I turn this page, I just want to warn you, it's a very beautiful turn, so just prepare yourself, because to me, this is perhaps the most beautiful landscape illustration in the entire game. That is just fantastic. It's breathtaking, especially, I'm pretty sure there's a playmat with this art on it. I don't own it. I wish I did, because this is the best landscape art in the game, in my opinion. Tell me what you think in a comment below. I love it. It's personally my favorite. It depicts the what I'm calling the world tree. It's basically the the great tree. I'm just going to read it. This is the great tree of Corsham. The Corsham acts as a gateway, welcoming newcomers into Aria with open arms. Basically, this thing can just reach out. It's said that the flow may power the Corsham's ability, just pulls people into Aria, teleports them to the base of the world tree. So you may just be walking around somewhere and the flow just powers up Corsham, and Corsham goes, I'll take that person over there. And it snatches you up and puts you in Aria. Which again is kind of cool, because it's kind of the only way an outsider can get into Aria unless the barriers come down, which is described there at the beginning. This page is really interesting. It talks about the World Tree, or what I'm calling the World Tree. It talks about the Great Tree. It also talks about this portion right here is what we've seen a lot in cards, Eisen's Peak and Larynx-Morth. Eisen's Peak is this giant mountain that has basically largely been untouched by the flow. It's not been changed too many times because it is, I guess, just so powerful and great. It's basically exempt, and because of that, there's this whole little town called Larynx-Morth that has kind of settled into Eisen's Peak, and it is very full of taverns, full of festivities. They have their own ale, or technically it's not ale, it's actually sake, which is pretty cool, and it's pale blue. I would drink some pale blue sake in this place. It looks like a good time. We've seen Larynx-Morth depicted in a lot of the tavern scenes on cards from Welcome to Wraith, particularly the Guardian cards. Perhaps we've seen it in Coax a Commotion as well, because they're, all in a tavern. We can assume that this is probably that location. They're all dressed for the cold. Larynx-Morth obviously is very cold. And so that's kind of cool that we've actually already seen this place, even though you may not have known what you were looking at. So there you go. This portion's really exciting if you're looking for a bard to be one of the classes introduced into the game. The people of Aria. The flow fuels everything that grows within Aria. The plants here are large and plentiful. They provide everything that you could need. The trees never stop producing fruit. Plants grow rapidly. The creatures are docile and tame, and because of that, the people of Aria are free to pursue a more idyllic lifestyle, with many choosing to become musicians, performers, and entertainers. The people of Aria flock to the region's abundant taverns for drinks, stories, music, and entertainment, taking advantage of any excuse for celebration or festivity, which, as you can see, is depicted all through here. We've also seen it depicted on many Guardian cards, people in taverns, people celebrating music, that sort of thing. So if you want a bard, this is where we're going to find Bard. There's not going to be a better place to put a Bard than in Aria. So if you're rooting for Bard class, this is your evidence right here. Also, by the way, look, the Meeps are pickpocketing this dude, which is hilarious. Also hilarious, Aria has no form of currency. Everyone just trades everything. So I think that's both hilariously diametrically opposed to what's about to happen when people get their hands on like Tales of Aria as a set, like the game, because we're going to be buying and like selling and that sort of thing, the boxes, the cards. It's just funny to me, but it's also interesting because like they're literally just trading stuff, and it's a trading card game, so it fits nicely. Now we come to a really fun part, the Everfest Carnival. The Everfest Carnival is a carnival that is like the size of a city. It travels from place to place around Aria. It's like steeped in tradition. The great families, like the centuries-old families of Aria, the prominent ones, actually have like acts and performances here in the Everfest Carnival. It's a place for all of the... If you need entertainment, this is where you go. Any type of entertainment that you want to find, if it's like magic shows, animal tricks, dancing, singing, playing an instrument, you're going to find it in the Everfest Carnival. As you can see, Bravo here grew up in the Everfest Carnival and performs in the Everfest Carnival. Here he's performing what might be like this section here. He might be part of the Maela, a group of fortune tellers, seers, oracles, enchantresses, and conjurers. Those within the Maela have talents in the realm of magic, performing acts of mystery and enchantments for those with an open mind. He kind of looks like he's doing that. I would appear that, but perhaps he's, and I think he has participated more in the Valder. The Valder are strongman acts. They're known for their work with animals and just, doing strong stuff. And that's kind of what Bravo does, is doing strong stuff. And in fact, he eventually becomes a guardian, which happens in a few pages in his story. But until then, he's just really, really buff dude. I guess he just goes to the gym a lot. It's this section over here in the book where it talks about the Maela that actually led me to one of the predictions that I had for the set before it was actually revealed that it was Aria and just an Aria set completely. I had originally predicted that we'd see a set of kingdoms with Aria as a kingdom and Volcor as a kingdom. And I kind of assumed in the Aria section we'd see Guardian cards or the Guardian class, and I guessed that we would see something like an Oracle class, because I thought it would be really interesting that they could like incorporate all of this magic and the possibility of like divining and seeing into the future. Maybe they have some mechanic where they like look into their deck further down for a specific thing to see into the future that way, sort of like what Wizard can do off the top of their deck, but perhaps with a different end goal. Very interesting idea. I hope they do something with that because they kind of describe it here. And before we turn the page, I do want to point out this section over here. Rings of tints hide fortune tellers and oracles, curtains drawn back to reveal the candlelit tables within. Illusions and displays of light weave their way through the air above, while below the enchantresses and illusionists dance, their golden jewelry chiming with every movement. So we know Illusionist is now a class in the game. We know Light Illusionist is a class, of course, sort of a talent class. And we've already seen depicted what could be an Illusionist. This could have been an Illusionist the entire time, and we just didn't notice because she's dancing with gold jewelry, just like the description provides. As we turn the page, we come to a couple of illustrations we've seen before. This is the illustration on Stonewall Confidence, and then we have Staunch Response, a great card, and a really cool picture. Notice we have here, this is most likely in Larynx that now that we know the name as we're going through this book, because we're depicting a bunch of taverns. It could be somewhere else, of course, but that's, you know, I'm just going to guess that's where we're at. And then here, I'm going to guess we're somewhere up near Eisen's Peak having a battle. This is a page where it talks a lot about like professions or crafts that you could have. You could be a brewmeister, a wayfarer, a defender, a diviner, a shaman, a dreamer. And in fact, I had kind of assumed that this dreamer thing was what they were going to be calling the oracle, because the description here of oracles doing their thing, and then the dreamer being able to kind of go into a dream state and then glimpsing echoes of what the past and then the future seems really cool. You could do stuff with your graveyard, you could do stuff with your deck where you kind of like opt a lot, you know, use opt effects. I think that could be a really interesting thing. We could also see if they decide to go the route of like, let's do 2 heroes or 2 classes that are up north and 2 that are more towards the south where things are lush and foresty. Maybe they lean into the shaman. Maybe they bring in a diviner. Those are both very interesting as well. Then we get to this page that talks about the Legend of the Guardians. This is an important thing, so I'm just going to read it because if you don't know the Legend of the Guardians or why Guardians exist, you should. Long ago, when Aria was surrounded by war and strife, the people of Aria were protected by the Guardians. The Guardians were blessed with a connection to an elemental, gifting them with extraordinary abilities. Through years of training, they learned to hone their abilities and transform into incredible warriors, blessed with both supernatural strength and elemental skills. The flow shaped them, molding them into the perfect protector, tasked with guarding their people and their home. However, as Aria entered an era of peace, the elementals began to fade away. The Guardians soon lost their ancient traditions. Now, as the barrier between Aria and the rest of the world begins to fade, the Guardians are re-emerging, tasked with defending Aria once more. And that's exactly what's depicted in Bravo's story. He's a strong man in the Everfest Carnival, grew up in the Everfest Carnival, and he goes on an adventure. And as he goes, he's basically surrounded. I think there's like this giant battle, and during the giant battle, he is essentially blessed by the flow, becomes a guardian, and we don't know if he gains any elemental power outside of these, you know, like power rings coming off his hammer, which is pretty cool. But I'm assuming that's what we're going to see in this set, is this idea that these guardians are not only super strong, but they are also blessed with some sort of elemental ability. And so if we're given 1 or 2 talents from this region, then we could be given like a lightning elemental like flow thing, and perhaps some sort of like I don't know, nature magic kind of a thing as well. Very interesting. By the way, if you're wondering what this giant piece of paper is, this relates to this Lost Tome section, which was a book discovered after the flow kind of revealed this cave, and the person writing it is an unnamed guardian. and they don't know exactly what it's all about. You can actually go through and read some of it. There's portions of it that are obviously blotted out, but feel free to read through that at your own leisure and make your own decisions. There is a card in the game called Tome of Fjendal, and this is a lost tome, and perhaps those two things are related, perhaps not. I'll let you make your own decisions about that. Finally, we come to the last section we're going to talk about, which are the creatures of Aria. We've seen some of these in cards already, and I imagine we'll see more going forward, but the one I care most about is this sweet-looking crystal lion. This is a Vitreo. A Vitreo is a crystal lion that is docile and does tricks in the Everfest Carnival with the strongmen. It's also depicted on the card from Monarch, Rouse the Ancients. You can see it in the bottom left of Vitreo staring up at the mountain that is like emerging and showing itself as an ancient. Why that ancient is emerging is something that we could talk about in another video. If you want to see that video, leave a like and a comment, and I can basically do it. It ties into the overall story of Welcome to Wraith and of Arcane Rising and Monarch as well, Crucible of War. All of them tie together into a cohesive story as to what's going on right now. If you want to know more about that and the ancients and the old ones, let me know in a comment below. By the way, I'm pretty sure on the back of the Vitreo in that card, there's a meep just hanging out. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, like this kind of style thing going on. The meep's just like on the back of the Vitreo. By the way, meeps are the only creatures that not only get their own creature blurb, but also a story about them. What does that tell me? It tells me that LSS wants you to like meeps. Meeps are like mischievous, like fox monkey cats that have a lion's mane as well, that steal stuff from people at the Everfest Carnival. In fact, we saw them stealing from what looked like, was it? I think it was just straight up. No, it's just another traveler. They just steal from you. They just run around and steal stuff from you. They're very mischievous, cute little dudes. We have an Ankylosaurus that's mixed with like I guess a modern day, like, what is that face? Like a panther? I don't know. It looks really awesome though. We have a fox, a literal fox called a Kaeo, which is cool. The Fianna is really neat. It's literally just a stag with a lion's mane. Like, I love the creature portrayals, and this is another reason why I love Aria. All these creatures are so cool to look at. So this is the land of Aria. This gives you a kind of a taste of what we can find and discover together in the Tales of Aria expansion. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you liked looking at the lore book with me. If you want to do more lore book stuff in the future, I mean, look at this. There's tons of stuff to look at. This is the development concepts. If you wanted to know what it goes into designing a character like, I don't like Bravo or like Dorinthia, then this is a great book to look at. And if you want, we can look through it more in the future. Let me know in a comment below if you enjoyed this. Look, there's a turtle with an island on its back. There's the armadillo slash ankylosaurus slash, I don't know what the face is. It's just a really cute thing hanging out. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about Aria. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching.